Hi, thanks for joining us today. Now, some of this might sound a little bit familiar to some of you if you've listened to Retiring in America with Andy Barkate. It's on weekends on KNZR. I am Jen Rizak. I co-host Retiring in America with Andy, and every single week I talk with Andy about all sorts of financial planning and retirement planning matters. And Andy, so great to see you again. How are you
Good to
today?
see you, Jen. It's so odd actually seeing your face. We're usually on the radio together, not doing something from a video standpoint. But this ought to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this. And we have somebody else with us, which I think is very important for the viewers of this video to actually know.
That's right. We're so glad to have Prachi Mehta here, who has been practicing law since 2015. She actually came to Bakersfield in the 90s with her parents and spent some time in Illinois and Texas for her education and training. Then she returned to Bakersfield a few years later in 2021, where she started her own law practice. And we are so excited to have you here today, Prachi, because estate planning is such an important part of preparing for retirement. So we're excited to get some insights from you. So welcome, and we're so glad to see you today.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Andy. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm very humbled to be on today's episode.
That's right. Well, as I said, this might be some familiar voices to some of you if you listen to Andy on the radio. But Prachi, again, this is a topic that we do talk quite a bit about on Retiring in America, thinking about estate planning as a key piece of preparing for retirement. And, you know, we hear the term estate planning a lot, right? We know it's important. We know we need to do it, but we don't always know exactly what this means. So explain to us exactly, when we're talking about estate planning, what does this mean? What does this entail?
Yep, that's a great question. So you're right. You know, estate planning is something that we all think about. We know we need to do it. I like to think of estate planning as just simply the process of making sure that things are as easy and inexpensive as possible for your loved ones if something were to happen to you. There are various definitions of estate planning floating out there. I like to think of it as it's the bundle of curated documents that helps you accomplish this goal. So typically, you know, your estate plan will include some sort of testamentary document like a will or a living trust or both. Your healthcare directive, your power of attorney, your HIPAA release, and for some, that might also include some irrevocable trusts and some business succession planning.
Right. So a lot of pieces there. And Andy, again, this is something we talk about on the radio show quite a bit, but there's a lot here with just estate planning. And certainly this is an important part of what you talk to your clients about on a regular basis.
We have a complete process here at Cal Retirement that we try to adhere to every single time, so nothing's missed. And we were looking at building income plans, tax plans, investment plans, making sure those things are all working in conjunction with each other. We want to make sure people understand the best way to use Social Security, Medicare. But then again, there's estate planning that comes along with that too. That's part of that rounds it out. And it's a very important piece of the whole financial planning process. And again, sometimes it's something people really don't want to talk about because sometimes it can bring up notions of not being around anymore, but it's still a very important piece. And our clients needed an estate planning attorney they could go to have these documents, the ones that they need, the ones that fit them, prepared and done the correct way. And, you know, we've been here in Bakersfield for, close to 40 years. The estate planning attorney we used to use up until about a year ago just finally retired. So I've been, for a while, I was searching and interviewing different attorneys to figure out who's the person that we can actually feel comfortable sending our clients to make sure that they're getting things explained to them, things put into place correctly. And I was introduced to Prachi just about a couple of months ago. We've talked multiple times since then. And well, that search is now over, basically. So we're trying to slowly introduce Prachi to our clients. We get requests from everything from a simple will to, how to change the deed on my house correctly, to I need healthcare directives. How does a power of attorney work, and do I need it? And I needed somebody to send our large group of clients to that could actually, have things explained to them and figure out the best way to have these different documents put into place based on what they really need.
Yeah. And again, so important to think about all these different pieces because Prachi, as Andy is saying there are so many people who are overlooking this piece, or maybe they just get a little bit confused about it. You hear all these different terms, a trust, a will. Talk a little bit about some of those basic pieces of an estate plan. Give us that, I guess, estate planning 101, if you will, some of those basic documents that we might want to be having in place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question as well. So typically your estate plan will include what we call a revocable living trust. Revocable living trust, I want you guys to think of it as basically a big box you're going to create. When you're going to create a document, you're going to sign it, and the signing of the document is going to create this box. And you're going to put all of your assets into this box. You're going to put your home, you're going to put your business interests, you're going to put your checking account, your savings account, retirement accounts we do treat a little bit differently, and life insurance get treated a little differently. But for the most part, your property is no longer going to be owned by Andy Barkate. Now it's going to be owned by the Barkate Family Trust. So your trust is going to be your primary estate planning vehicle. The nice thing about a trust is you're going to designate who you want your assets to go to if something were to happen to you. When that something does happen to you, centuries from now, your assets are going to go straight to those named beneficiaries without having to go through what we call probate, which, just take my word for it, because that's a topic for a whole nother episode, but it's a very unfun, expensive, and lengthy process. And so you want to avoid probate. The rest of the documents are, so you're going to have a will. If you have any children under the age of 18, you're going to need a will to designate guardians for them. Something were to happen to you. You're going to need a financial power of attorney. So think car accident, stroke, any, dementia, anything that renders you alive but unable to manage your assets, invest your accounts, pay your taxes, pay your mortgage. You're going to designate someone that you trust to take over your finances for you. You will also get a healthcare directive. So that is two pieces. It's got the healthcare proxy, again, stroke, dementia, heart attack, something that leaves you alive but unable to communicate your own healthcare wishes. You'll pick a proxy. You'll also fill out what we commonly call the pull the plug or do not pull the plug box, right? Whichever you prefer. And then you're going to need, depending on your net worth, you might need some what we call advanced tax planning. So Andy, I'm sure, can speak to this as well. But right now, the estate tax exemption for a married couple, it's about 24 million, means you can pass away. And as long as you have under $24 million, you will not owe the government any estate tax. In 2026, that amount is set to be slashed in half. So in 2026, any married couple who passes away with over 12 million in assets is going to pay 40%. Right now, it's a 40% tax to the government out of your estate. So that money gets taken before the assets go to the beneficiaries. So at that point, and keep in mind that for purposes of assessing what your net worth is, we look at everything. We look at your home, your retirement, even your life insurance, death benefit payout. So the closer we start to get to that exemption, we want to start talking about some special irrevocable trusts, charitable tax planning, and just in general advanced tax planning to mitigate those tax burdens.
Yeah, and Andy, I think we just did a radio show about that.
We just about did, yes. I think one day I'm just going to hand the microphone to Prachi and let her go, and I'll just go get coffee. But no, I think it's an area that most people know that is important, but it's also an area that's a mystery to most people. And a lot of people think, well, I just don't need a will or a trust. Well, I think that's wrong in almost all cases. You need either one or the other or both. I tell people at a minimum, you need some sort of will and at least powers of attorney and healthcare directives, because you will eventually need these documents. And after you've had the event, you can't go back and put them together then. So you need to do them before then. And again, it's just another piece of the whole retirement / financial planning, investment planning process. Again, it's your money. And I tell people, I can't believe my phone's on. Sorry, everybody. That's a rookie mistake. I'm sorry about that. But eventually you're going to need these documents. And I tell people all the time, you want to make sure that you can use your money. And eventually, one day, you're going to want to make sure it goes to somebody else who you want it to go to. After you're finished using it, where's it going to go? And that usually is going to be spouses, children, grandchildren, charities. And you want to make sure you spell that out. It's your money. And again, try as much as you can to get it going in the places you want the most efficient way possible. And we talk a lot about it and just a general financial planning about how to deal with your investments, how you want those to be structured, what kind of risks you feel comfortable taking. Are you going to need income? Do you just want growth or do you want both? The different income sources you might have, what are the best ways to take those income sources and plan from a tax point of view to have the fewest amount of taxes extracted from those? And again, know those retirement accounts that so many people have, 401ks, IRA accounts, most of those have never been taxed. And the government knows this, and if you have a big 401k, you should probably feel a bit like you've got a target on your back, because you do. But there's a lot of ways out there, a lot of advanced ways to actually reduce or mitigate a lot of those taxes. And like we always say, it doesn't happen by accident. You actually have to put some sort of plan together to get from point A to point B. But I think, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think you can pretty much do anything if you plan for it. So, but again, it's got to be something you're actually putting together, putting a little work in, and it comes out and usually it'll get you from point A to point B in a period of time. But once you get there, you'll be in a much better place going forward.
Right. And Prachi, one of the things that Andy talks about on the radio show, and that I'm sure he talks about with his clients too, when it comes to these things, there are no wrong answers for what your goals are, what you want. The only wrong answer is not doing anything about it. And I'd love to get some of your insights on that from the estate planning piece of this. I mean, whatever you are hoping to accomplish, you can do that. No one's going to tell you you're wrong, but you got to actually make sure you do the work to put the plan in place.
Yes, that is a very insightful point, and it's so true. And it kind of goes back to what Andy was saying is, like, we don't deny it. Estate planning, it's not that much fun to think about, right? You're thinking about what's going to happen to your stuff when you're not here. And it's very easy to say, well, I don't care. I'm not going to be here, so I don't want to worry about that. But the reality is you do. Everybody worries, right? You've worked with Andy. You've spent your life building, a legacy. You've spent your life creating or preserving generational wealth. And the only thing worse than not thinking about estate planning is not thinking about estate planning, right? Which kind of brings the obvious question: what happens if you do pass away without having done any estate planning? Well, California, but any state you live in, there are default rules that take into effect when you pass away. And the state basically gets to decide, according to its default rules, how your assets are going to be distributed, because you didn't take the opportunity to make that decision yourself, right? So the state's going to start taking account of who in your next of kin is alive, whether that's parents, siblings, children, spouses, or some combination, right? And people are going to get a chunk based on who's around.
Yeah.
But the point is, you're exactly right. You can avoid that. You can designate who you want your assets to go to. And not only that, right? But you can, with a trust, that's where things start to get fun, right? You can have all sorts of restrictions, stipulations, conditions. You can say, I want my child to inherit his inheritance as long as he goes to college. My child will only get money from the trust fund to the extent necessary to match his income. So you can kind of build in some incentivization provisions there. What people don't think about, but what they should, is if you don't have a trust in place and you don't specify what's going to happen, your child is likely going to get a lump sum when you pass away. If they're under 18, then when they turn 18. I don't know about you guys, but I would not have done very wise things with a couple million when I was 18.
Nobody would, right?
Nobody would, right? So with a trust, there are actually measures we can take to make sure that money, that inheritance, is protected from things like pricey divorces or ex-spouses or creditors or bankruptcy or lawsuits, right? These are things that we don't think about, we don't want to happen, but the reality is that they do. So by being proactive, we can have measures in place to make sure that the money that you're leaving stays within the family, right? And that's where we get this idea of generational wealth. The idea is to create a lifetime, a legacy, so that it's preserved for future generations. And that can only happen if you take the time now and be intentional about it.
Yeah. One last question, Prachi. I know in looking at my notes here, you have a couple different areas that you focus on, including special needs planning, charitable giving. Talk a little bit about some of those specific areas. Special needs planning, for example. Obviously, if a family's got a situation where they know someone's going to need to be provided for later in life, they're aware of it. But let's talk about some considerations there.
Yeah, absolutely. So special needs planning, it's an area where you might benefit from it if either you or a potential beneficiary, so a child, a sibling, or a spouse, anyone that you are taking care of, is receiving what we call government benefits. So these are children with special needs. Sometimes these can be adults who have gone through, catastrophic accidents and are now receiving SSI or disability from the government because they no longer work. All of these benefits are tied to income, right? If a beneficiary is receiving these benefits, government benefits, and then they suddenly come into a $2 million inheritance tomorrow from their mom, they are no longer going to continue to qualify for these benefits. So that's where special needs planning comes in, right? You don't want to leave the money outright to those beneficiaries in a trust. Then we engage in some little more advanced special needs planning techniques to make sure that the money is available for those beneficiaries should they need it, but it doesn't jeopardize their government benefits, their SSI, their disability.
Right.
It's a good one. Charitable planning, that's another great one. We've got a lot of high net worth clients who have a great amount of money. They don't necessarily want to pay estate taxes because they're kind of north of that $24 million threshold, soon to be $13 million threshold. And so they want to do something meaningful with their legacy. They want to provide for their beneficiaries and their children. They want to minimize taxes. And so then they'll come to me and ask about how charitable planning can benefit causes they care about. That can be charities, it can be pets, it can be their alma mater. There are so many different creative ways we can help clients leave their money to causes and organizations that they care about while getting that cherry on the cake, which is avoiding that heavy tax burden.
Right. Certainly something, a couple of those areas of planning, I think, are so important to people of all ages. And of course, Andy, the retirees, pre-retirees, the people that you work with are no different when it comes to some of these types of planning needs.
Well, I think everybody needs to plan to a certain degree, and it's nice to be able to have a resource that when we run into these needs with our clients, we meet somebody and we're asking them a lot of questions. We're trying to find out as much as we can financially about them, but that we can't help but cross that bridge and talk to them about things that are more personal. And that's when some of these things come up. And to have things done the right way, and planning is all about just making sure that you've looked at things and you're taking care of all the contingencies, because you don't know when they're going to come up. And obviously, when they do come up, if you haven't planned for them, it's pretty much too late. You can't do tax planning after the fact. Everybody, when they go see their CPA in April for the prior year, they always want to think about, what can I do? Well, it's too late. You should have done it the prior year. And it's kind of the same thing with estate planning and most other things within the financial planning world. And I'm very happy that we've now got a good relationship with somebody here local that can take care of our clients in this regard. I think she's going to be pretty busy.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. And Prachi, thanks so much for taking some of this time today. Andy, very well said. Prachi, do you have any final insights as we start to wrap this up today? Really great insights from you today.
Thank you. Again, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm always happy to disseminate this information, because I think a lot of the block with estate planning comes with it being a little overwhelming and intimidating. So every chance I get, I just try to get out as much information out there as possible. The last thing I'll say is, if you're still overwhelmed, that's totally okay. There's no way to cover it in the 10 or 15 minutes we've been going, but very much like Andy, we have a very structured process here at my firm. It's a 4-step process. We have you come in for the initial meeting. I have you fill out a questionnaire, so I get all the information I need beforehand to come to our meeting prepared. If we decide to move forward, we have the design meeting. I ask you the nitty-gritty questions, the uncomfortable ones, right? Where do you want your assets to go if something happened? Who do you want taking care of your children? Who do you want managing your finances? All of that. We then get to work on our end. We email you the documents once they're ready for your review. We've got a document review meeting. That's the third meeting. I walk you through all of the important parts of your estate plan. It's over 100 pages, so only the most important parts. And then once you're satisfied, we get the signing ceremony on the calendar. It's where you come into my office and you'll sign the documents in front of the witnesses and the notaries. So, take comfort in knowing that very much like Andy, we have a very structured process. We don't want to miss anything. And there's quite a bit of predictability to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so appreciate your time. And again, as we start to close this out, I think what would be really helpful is to put up some contact information. If you do have any questions for Andy or Prachi about your retirement planning or estate planning needs, we'll go ahead and put this up so you are free to reach out to them. If you do have questions, if you do have concerns, they would love to be able to help you. So here's how you can get in touch with, learn a little bit more about Prachi. Her website's there and her phone number, email address, same thing for Andy. If you have questions, here's how you can reach the two of them. And everybody, again, so thankful for your time today. We appreciate it very much, and we hope you have a great day.